Just let us know when we're live. Oh, yeah, we're getting sound. I can hear it.
What's up?
Yo.
Welcome to the live stream.
All right, we're gonna give people a couple seconds to log in. Welcome to the live stream, everybody. Cool.
Hey.
Ready?
All right, we got some people in the house. Studio Noon, what's up?
What's going on?
Adonis, what's up?
Oh.
Yo. All right. Welcome to Protest Rolls 101. I'm your host, Whirl. We have some very special guests this time. We got, to my right, my immediate right, we have Amelia, Cry Till I Die.
What's up?
And then on my far right, we have Josh, a.k.a. Josue. Wow, this is really loud. I can hear it on my phone. It's tripping me out. All right, everybody. Welcome to this little workshop that we hope that you'll enjoy and use these tips out in the streets later today or around the city. So last night, we had a nice little meeting, Amelia, Josh, and myself, and we just went over some collective experiences and knowledges. A lot of what we're going to share with you comes from our personal experiences, so take it with a grain of salt, but also bear in mind that we're extremely experienced.
It's true.
Professionals.
Josh, you've been in protests in Chile when stuff was pretty hot.
I first kind of was really introduced to protesting in Baltimore in 2015 during the Freddie Gray uprising, and since then I've kind of been all over in Chile, in Colombia, here.
Cool. That's great. And Amelia, you've just been on the streets in Philly for a while. We became closer friends through the ICE protest, and just the other day you caught a tear gas canister and put it out.
You make it sound so cool. Yeah, I put out a couple tear gas canisters. It was sick.
Yo, it is cool as fuck. Honestly, these two people to my right, they're cool as fuck. Give it up, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, well, I think we can jump into this. Basically, we're going to break it down for y'all. We have, we're just going to go through the different roles that we came up with. And there's actually a lot of different roles if you're trying to get involved in this movement or help out. You don't necessarily have to be like getting beaten by cops. There's a lot of things you can do around the city or even at home. So we've broken it down into at-home roles. And then also peripheral roles, which you can do, driving around, not necessarily at the protest. And then we also have in the street roles, which we'll get into that in detail. But let's start with the basics. Let's start with at-home roles. Do y'all want to take it away and just what are some things that we can do at home without leaving our house that's helpful to this movement and justice?
Yeah, I think the most obvious thing that we've all been seeing is like the donation campaigns. Obviously, spreading and redistributing wealth is super important to this movement, and especially for those that are getting unemployment. I mean, just spread that money around and use it as wisely as possible. And then I think there's also spreading information. There's using social media, Instagram, to spread infographics, things like that. Even making infographics. If you're a talented graphic designer, you could be compiling this information and putting it into a digestible format. One thing I was kind of have been doing a little bit, because I got a little bit sick in the past couple of days, so I haven't been in the streets as much, was kind of like selectively sending out pertinent information, but also simultaneously spreading directed and pointed disinformation.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the disinformation, because everybody I know right now is trying to spread as accurate information as possible to all of our friends. But you bring up a good point, which is that you can also, if you have the facility and the experience, you can use your information spreading tactfully. Like, can you give us some examples of how you might do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I recently got on Twitter, which was the worst mistake of my life by far. But Twitter...
Fuck Twitter.
I agree.
It's very helpful, though.
But it is super helpful for spreading information and kind of looking at hashtags and things like that. And the couple of hashtags that I tend to cruise to kind of keep tabs on the super far-right extremists are obviously MAGA. There's another one, KAG, which stands for Keep America Great. And then one of the things that I've been monitoring pretty closely is this whole QAnon trend. And if you don't know anything about it, I would definitely recommend reading up about it because it's one of the most dangerous movements, I think, currently going on out there. And one of their main hashtags is WW1WGA, which stands for Where We Go One, We Go All. And there's this whole super elaborate conspiracy theory about this undercover, like, secret agent type that has Q clearance. Apparently, it's the highest government clearance. It's insane. The people that follow it are completely psychotic. They should be avoided at all costs.
So how can you take advantage of these Twitter accounts?
So by posting things on their hashtags that either divert their attention or covertly get them on our side, whether it's like posting those really graphic videos of people getting absolutely murked by cops, you know, those things are really indefensible. And when you see people defending them, you know, it really kind of can change public opinion.
So you can use this really graphic imagery to activate conservatives who are not active or who don't give a shit about this cause.
Potentially, yeah. And I think that obviously a lot of these people don't give a fuck about violence against black people, but there are more and more videos of like that 75-year-old man that got absolutely rocked. And I hate to spread those videos because they're so cringe-inducing and so hard to watch. But
Which is a great point. And just to share really quick something that happened to me a week ago, just in my own scattered brain, I posted a graphic video to my Instagram, and I got a response from someone who I consider a friend, and it was very jarring to them, and it had a negative effect on their day. So I think it's worth noting to really think before you post. If you're going to post graphic stuff, do it intentionally towards people who, you know, need to see it. Bear in mind, you know, a lot of friends of ours, they're trying to find space to relax and catch a breath or get some kind of morale-boosting content from the internet. And you want to be careful if, like, you don't want to shove that in someone's face if they're not ready for it.
Right. And to circle back around to things that you can do behind the scenes, I think morale-boosting and therapeutic efforts are not wasted. You want to chime in here, Amelia?
Yeah. I guess I want to say, like, there's so much that you can do at home that doesn't really involve, like, being on your phone or, like, interacting with social media, because that can be really exhausting and not for everybody. And sort of like put this into light, a lot of people will sometimes feel like guilty if they're at home and they can't be in the streets, but it's super valid to stay home. Especially like if you live with somebody who like has COVID or you have symptoms, or like you live with somebody who's immunocompromised. And just to sort of like reiterate this point where it's like, there's a lot of really helpful stuff that you can do at home. Like you can be super helpful just like doing like small things for your friends and just like showing that you care about them. Like I think we were talking about like cooking food for people and offering to drop it off. But also just like sending your friends texts like goes a long way in like times like this. Just like if you just take a second and you just like text somebody and you're like, hey, like, you know, I really love you a lot. Like that'll go so far for that person.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and I think I want to jump in here for half a second and say that I think you can be well-intentioned and be reaching out to your black friends now and saying, like, how are you doing and such, but, like, you already know they're not doing well. So, like, be intentional with your words and reach out appropriately. And
that's a great point. Be sensitive.
Be sensitive.
So I feel like we covered the at-home roles pretty well. Do y'all feel like we should move on to some of the peripheral roles?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So, yeah, take it away. We're gonna talk about things you can do outside your home, but not necessarily at the protest. So yeah, take it away. What are some things we can do peripherally to the protesting?
Something that is always super helpful, and this is for people that maybe don't want to risk COVID exposure, but have access to like a car or some extra money. Donating supplies and food to like pickup sites it's a super helpful thing. And if you just go on Twitter and you just look up like Philly protest or wherever you are, you can like typically find some information about where to donate supplies, because a lot of people on Twitter are like sharing that info. Also, I think Instagram is good for this too, but I'm not super tapped into social media, so I don't quite know.
Lately, Instagram's been feeling really mute, and I think partially because Instagram was designed for, I mean, it's the most vapid platform. It's for self-promotion, and you can't share links.
Yo, fuck Instagram.
Yeah, fuck Instagram.
But with that in mind, tell us what's the best way to find out? You think Twitter, just checking the Twitter feeds, or maybe just asking friends? Like, there's a lot of people doing research. If you happen to have a friend who's really involved, maybe just hit them up for a second. Be like, yo, I know this is extra labor and I'm taking your time, but can you just like throw me a couple links or something?
There's also like a master list that has been floating around a Google Doc.
Really good point.
I don't have the link to it now, but maybe we can link to that later on the page.
That's a good point. We're also going to we have an outline for this whole workshop that we're going to share on the Patreon and through our Instagram, so that anybody can access this outline, and we can add that link perhaps to the master document. Just keep in mind there's a master document out there that just has like almost everything that you could put your money towards. Also worth noting, Philly Bail Fund said that they have enough right now, I believe.
Yeah, they're funded.
So Philly Bail Fund is all set, so we're going to start looking into other places to send those resources to. Good. So what are some other peripheral things that people can do?
Well, I just want to say really quick about the supplies thing. This is super helpful to do, to like bring water to a protest is like insanely helpful, because especially on like today, like it's so hot and people
pretty hot out.
Like there's gonna be a lot of people and they're gonna be like exhausted and dehydrated, and like bringing water is just like, if you do that, you're like, that's awesome, that's so fucking cool. So yeah, if you did that, that'd be awesome.
Hell yeah. Yeah, everybody needs water, a lot of it.
Yeah, food, water. I think one really important thing right now is, because there's more and more people getting arrested every single day, is to try to do jail support if you have a car.
Jail support, very important.
Yeah, jail support generally entails going to the precinct and picking up carfuls of people and busing them around. And there's varying levels of organization to this. Some places there are like camps out front where they're directing people like, okay, here all the West Philly people go in this car, and then the South Philly people can go in this car. But it might not be that organized. But if you have a car and you have the time and you can do it, it's something that's worthwhile.
True. Yeah. And Amelia, I was going to say, you and I were bouncing around to a couple jail supports, and just in regard to how you find those locations, I feel like the word spreads really quickly, just word of mouth. Like we were just asking around, like, where's the jail support? And people just pointed us there. But with that said, are there other ways to find out the locations?
Yeah, just as in the same way where it's you can find the information about where to drop off supplies on Twitter. You can also find information about jail support on Twitter. And it's always good to be sharing those things or retweeting them. Again, I don't super understand Twitter. I'm kind of brand new at it, so I don't know. But it's always helpful to share that info. There are like a couple accounts that you can try following. I know Philly Socialists is usually really good at posting about all kinds of stuff. Shout out to them. They're really great. But again, like the main thing about jail support is basically what it is you just go hang out outside the precinct where like, protesters or your friends are in, and it puts pressure on the cops to like, process those people as quickly as possible, because if there's like a big protest outside, like yelling at them, like it's going to make a difference. So it's always really good to go to jail support just for that. But it's also really good because as your friends or as protesters are released from jail, it can be really traumatic for them, and having like a crowd of people cheering them on is like really cool. So like I would encourage anybody to go to jail support. It can be a really powerful experience if you've never done it before. It can be really connecting. You can have a lot of good conversations with people.
Great way to make new friends.
You also, another aspect is you'll see cops be assholes, and that will really impact you. So, because when cops arrest people, they're like really rude and brutal to them. And then, like when I was at jail support the other day, even as people were being released after like being on a bus for like 7 hours and getting tear gas, like the cops were still super rude to them. Like after that whole ordeal, like right when they were leaving, like the cops would say really mean things and just be really rude.
True. And when we were there together, I think you also made a new friend there named Tomas, who's a firefighter in Philly who got arrested. That's right, people. The cops arrested a firefighter. The homie's supposed to be out there fighting fires, and they put him in jail. Anyway, so we met Tomas, and Tomas came out, and he was basically like, yo, like, if y'all weren't here, I would just be in tears. So it is really powerful to just show up for even strangers who are going through punishment, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to help them to document, because there's so much abuse going on behind the scenes. Like in jail, people not being given water, their zip cuffs are not let off of them. And I want to make a quick note about zip cuffs. There's a lot of information flying around about how to get out of them, but all that information is about zip ties. Zip cuffs have reinforced metal in them, and they're extremely difficult to get out, and almost all those tricks to get out of zip ties do not work.
The point being, also be prepared to document abuse at jail support.
Exactly.
Gotcha. And which also reminds me that our friend Amna was at jail support, who's a street medic. So if y'all happen to know friends who have medic training but don't have a place to put that, jail support is a great place for that, because they don't treat, wounds in jail. People come out bleeding. So
yeah,
it's good to have a medic at all these jail support sites, even more than one. So I think we did pretty good for peripheral roles.
Yeah,
Y'all feel good about moving on to
let's keep it moving.
Being in the streets. Yo, who's ready to be in the streets today?
Yeah, today's the big one, y'all. Make sure you get out there.
All right, so there's many different street roles out there, right? There's so many different things you can do, but there is a sort of blanket preparation that everybody can do, and we put together a list that we feel is helpful. Just, how to prepare, what to bring, regardless of which role you're filling. So maybe we can start with preparation. What do you want to do in the days leading up to a protest?
You want to hydrate and drink a lot of water every day before a protest. Seriously.
Yeah, 2 liters, y'all. 2 liters.
I've started doing it, and I feel way better. I would recommend this.
This is 1 liter. You need to be drinking 2 of these at least every day.
Give it up for water, everybody.
Yeah, water's dope.
It's tough. You got to really chug. Like, drinking 2 liters of water is not easy. Like, you really have to like force yourself to chug more water than you think you need.
Hell yeah. And also, Amelia, you were saying you took a workshop that was saying that you actually want to start hydrating 3 days before, like, because your body like builds up that storage,
Yeah, for real.
All right, so we got water, and then food. You want to talk about what kinds of foods you want to be eating leading up to a protest?
Yeah, you want to eat a lot of brown rice.
Brown rice, yo, that's the fuel of the future.
Yeah.
Fuck brown rice, but I'm here for this.
All right.
We've already had this debate.
Have fun with your nutrient void white rice over there.
Yeah, just anything healthy. Just eat healthy food. Yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, chill on the Oreos, will you, everybody?
Yeah,
I've seen y'all.
I personally have days where I only eat Oreos, but I haven't done that in a while because I'm trying to be healthy.
That's because you're a responsible protester. Okay, so food, eat healthy, obviously. Sleep. Let's talk about sleep.
Oh, sleep.
That's really important, right? You don't want to be staying up watching YouTube. You don't want to be like binging on whatever Netflix shit you're watching. You want to go to bed early. You're getting into some shit. Anything could happen. You want to get a good night's sleep. And also, like, on the tip of food and water, you also want to be eating those healthy foods also is going to help you sleep. You know, if you're drinking herbs,
True.
herbal teas, that stuff's going to help you sleep, and you're going to feel a lot better, and you're going to be a lot more useful at the protest.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Josh, you mentioned stretching. You're a big stretch advocate.
Yeah, definitely advocate for.
You want to
stretching.
demonstrate any stretches for us?
Absolutely not. But I think
Oh, I need a booze sample. I mean, I love you, but tell us about stretching and
Yeah,
what it
I mean,
does for.
touch your toes. I don't know. Fucking move your body in ways that feels like you're pushing the limits of your body, because you're going to be pushing your body to the limit every day out there in the streets.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just stay limber, because you might have to run, you might have to fight. You never know what's going to go down. So you got to be prepared for anything.
Hell yeah. That's really good advice. Stretch, get the blood flowing. Just get your body ready to be out there. Another one I was going to mention is meditation. Like Amelia and I headed to the protest together a few days ago, and before we headed out, we did like a 5-minute meditation on the roof just to
It is awesome.
just to zone in, just to take a moment to breathe and connect with our intentions.
Yeah.
Do you want to mention anything about that, or?
I'm going to meditate a lot today before I go out.
Shout out Nestor, touch them
Yeah.
toes. Hell yeah.
I think with meditating, one thing that you can focus on, and it's really unpleasant, but it's kind of thinking about what it could possibly be like if you've never experienced violence at the hands of the state. It's extremely, extremely mentally taxing, and it's good to kind of be in a headspace where you're ready to mentally receive that, because getting hit with a baton doesn't just hurt your body. It'll hit you mentally too. So kind of be thinking about those.
That's
kind
a
of
good point. In the mental preparation, just be gearing your mind up for some really harsh stuff in the world. But that's not to say that all your meditation needs to be thinking about cops. I think it's also good to just clear your mind. A little bit of both.
Yeah, empty your mind, but also be prepared for the psychological impacts. Because, even if you don't get hit personally, I was at the protest on Saturday, and right at the Rizzo statue, the police just, absolutely murked this kid right in the top of his skull. And, I've seen stuff like that before, so maybe I'm a little bit more desensitized than other people, but it was really jarring, and I wasn't really fully in the headspace to receive that information.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good point. Meditate. So let's also talk about letting friends know where you are. Why is that important?
Yeah, I can talk about this a little bit. Unless, did you want to say something? And just that what we just were talking about kind of reminded me to just mention that all three of us are coming from this perspective, sharing this information, because all of us in different protest situations have seen a lot of police violence, and it's really real. And I think I'm just bringing that up because that's sort of where we're coming from, trying to share this info with you, is we've all seen really serious stuff go down, and it can be really intense. So we just are really trying to prepare you, which leads me to this point of why it's important to tell your friends where you're going. Some shit might happen really suddenly, and you might get really hurt, or people around you might get really hurt by the police. I've seen it happen a lot. It's really troubling, really upsetting. So it's really good to talk to your friends about it the day of, when you're hey, I just want to let you know I'm going downtown. I'm planning on protesting. Maybe check back with me later.
Right, so it doesn't have to be minute to minute, but it just, a general, I'm going to be out there today.
Yeah.
Check in later.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't reply, look into that.
Yeah, and also it's important, I think, to kind of have sort of plan B and C ready to go. If you get separated from your group and it's been a while, maybe set a location, okay, let's meet in Rittenhouse, or let's meet at whatever, you know what I mean? Just set a place and be if shit goes down and we all get separated and we have to disperse, let's try to meet up here and make sure it's kind of a little bit further from the protest.
That's a good point. Good point. Everybody has different crew. You can work out different plans together. Just work it out. Take care of each other.
And also, I would say, talk to your friends not just the day of the protest, but in the days leading up to it. Just check in with them and be hey, or even call them and just ask them what they're thinking about and if they want to protest, because it's really important to have conversations with people during this time, because firstly, you just get a lot of emotional support. And also it's in times like this, you can be connected to people more than you usually would, just because shit's really going on, and it I don't know.
collective trauma is real.
You can have some really special moments with your friends if you just reach out to them right now.
Hell yeah. That's a really good point. It doesn't necessarily have to be all about like preparing for the worst. You can also be maybe seizing these opportunities to connect with people, to deepen your friendships, etc. So, yeah, those are great points. Also, you want to write the legal support hotline number on your arm.
Absolutely. Just be careful because days like today when it's super hot and like on Saturday when this happened to me is if you write it in Sharpie or something, it can and probably will get sweated off. Like you'll sweat it, clean off your skin. So I wrote it on a bunch of little Post-it notes, and I was actually handing out a bunch of extras to people that had them. So it's never a bad idea to have a paper copy.
That is
too.
a great idea. Super helpful. Yeah, that Sharpie is just going to melt off your arms today, so be careful about that. Okay, so also...
oh, wait, can I say something really quick about the number? I was originally sort of confused about why to write the number. It seemed like everyone writes the number on their body. But then a lot of times people get arrested and they get taken away in the cop van or whatever. And they're never given the opportunity to call anybody. They're just released right away. The number is mainly for like exceptional circumstances in which
You're charged.
Yeah, like maybe and I've seen this happen a lot where a cop will lie and say that you tried to attack them to like single you out or to put pressure on the group. And that it's very common. So having the number on you is really good because you literally never know what a cop is going to try to do to you. And like they will stoop really, really low. So it's a good idea to write the number just in case, but you probably won't need to use it.
Most likely. I want to jump ahead really, really quickly just to make a quick note that if you do get arrested, do not, under any circumstance, say anything. Even if the cops are being chummy, they seem super nice, do not say anything. Anything you say can and will be used against you, but they're probably not going to read you your Miranda rights, which is a direct violation of our laws. But all laws have flown out the window. I mean, habeas corpus has been suspended in New York, so don't talk to the cops. And especially if the FBI comes and asks you about your political affiliations, do not, under any circumstance, tell them anything.
Lawyer, bitch. Don't say that, but
don't say that.
And just to speak to that, to like when you get arrested, and I've had experience getting arrested at a protest, and a lot of my friends have. When that happens, it's really intense, and it can be really scary and traumatizing and really horrible. And it really sucks, and that's why we're trying to abolish the police. For a lot of reasons, not just because protesters have a hard time. It can be really intense, and the cops will like lie to you and treat you like shit and yell at you and just do anything. And it can be really scary, and it's like okay if for your own comfort, you like behave in a way that makes you feel safe, whether that be like trying to be like congenial with the cop. Like you don't have to super be like all aggro at cops. Like it's okay if you need to like be softer, because it can be really scary, and that can be a tactic to help you feel safe.
That's a good point. Also, anything else? Are you good on that point?
Yeah.
I was going to say another point in for preparation, and again, we're just talking about blanket preparation for all the roles that you might do out in the streets. So another thing we talked about was SIM cards. Do you need to take your SIM card out? Do you not need to take it out? There's many different reasons why you might or might not take it out. I know, Josh, you have a lot of knowledge about this if you want to jump into the SIM card topic.
Yeah, so the whole bringing phones to protest things, I think you have to be really intentional with it. I think that it's important to know your role, and we'll get into that in a second. But if you are somebody that's there to document and you want to do it in real time, obviously you're going to need that tool. But I cannot stress enough that you should be using a burner phone bought with cash so that it cannot be traced back to you. Maybe set up a separate account that's not attached to your normal email, whatever you got to do it. There's
so
levels of
best case, burner phone. Best case.
That's the best thing you can do if you want to stay in touch. Buy a burner phone with cash. And there's levels of paranoia, whether you're like worried about getting scooped up by some like really nefarious organization, or you're just like a first timer getting on the streets who's really doesn't have much political inclinations, you can kind of use your own better judgment here, whether you want to bring your phone. I would say be really careful documenting and how you document, whose faces you're including, whose faces you're excluding, things like that.
True. We'll get into that.
On the SIM card thing, the way I do it personally, then this is just my own thing. I will bring my phone, but I will take the SIM card out. Specifically, this is because the police have this tool that they call a Stingray, and I've seen it here. It's apparently there's some in West Philly currently, and I've seen it in Baltimore. And what it is a device that funnels all the cellular data from whatever area it's in proximity to, funnels all the cellular data into this. It's usually a van, and it intercepts all of your data. So it doesn't matter if you're using encrypted channels, doesn't matter all that shit's out the window if there's a Stingray in operation. And also one thing they do is they grab the IMSI off of your SIM card. So when you do go and put your SIM card back into your phone, when you get back, if you had it in at any point during the protest, then they can start tracking you later using other tools, NSA, FBI, whatever.
So maybe a good basic guideline would be, if you don't need to use your phone every moment during the protest, if you're not doing live streaming, not tweeting, maybe just take your SIM card out, Just put it back in later when you're checking in with your friends.
Take it out at home and then put it back in at home. I wouldn't recommend doing that at the protest.
Hell yeah. Amelia?
Maybe I'm dumb, but I honestly have never ever worried about any of that stuff or thought about it, and I just leave my phone on and bring it with me. But I don't know, like.
Yeah, like I said, there's levels of paranoia, and it's a matter of how involved you are and how worried you are. But it's a good precaution to take for anybody.
Yeah, it's slightly controversial, The level of risk involved is debatable, but we're just trying to give you some best practice advice. Use it in a way that feels good to you or not. So, is it everybody good on the SIM card topic?
Yeah, I think we should move on to kind of what you should bring and then also the roles.
Well. True. So we just kind of wrapped up on blanket preparation for in the street and just in terms of what you're preparing at home. But we also want to talk about what to bring. What are you going to bring with you? There's a lot of different things that you might bring or not bring. There's, topics of weight saving. I don't know. We have a lot of thoughts about that. So to start off, I actually want to insert something that we just talked about right before the live stream, which is bicycles. Is it a good idea to bring your bicycle? Is it not? Do you want to be on a bicycle during the protest? Do you want to lock it up and walk? Pros and cons. Do y'all want to tell us a little bit about pros and cons of bringing bicycles to a protest?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about this. I've done both. I've both brought my bicycle and left it. I've locked it up. I've taken public transit. And so I would say the pros of bringing your bicycle are that when shit goes down, you can get out of there very quickly with a bicycle, which is helpful. And I think wearing a bicycle helmet is good in general, and it makes you kind of less suspicious. Like if you roll up in like SWAT style gear and you're like have no bicycle with you, but you're rocking the helmet, it might look a little weird. But if you're with a bicycle and you're wearing a helmet, that's going to be helpful to you and make you look less suspicious. But on the flip side of that, I do think that bicycles are a huge obstruction, and a lot of times when you're in mass groups of people, stampeding can be a serious issue, and bicycles can absolutely interfere with the egress of people from a bad situation. Right,
and like we were talking about earlier, when you're riding it and you have space to ride it, it's an incredible tool. But when you're contained and there's people around you, or if like tear gas is happening, it's a huge burden. So I don't know, use your discretion. There's a lot of different angles on this, and you might be participating in different areas around the march in terms of where you're positioned in the crowd. Just be aware of it, be aware of the fact that if shit turns a certain way, your bike might be a burden. So
also the police have been confiscating hella bikes. If you get arrested, they'll just leave it on the street or they'll take it. So
yeah, after the action or the march on, I want to say Monday, where they tear gassed the highway. Was that on Monday?
Yeah, I think that was, or Tuesday.
Good question.
Yeah, so yeah, there were a lot of bikes just left from people that got arrested. And the police, I think you're right that they confiscated some, but some of the bikes we were able to like rescue from down on the grassy bank by the highway and bring them to the jail support, which is just sort of another aspect of jail support. Is sometimes it means going to the scene of a mass arrest and picking up people's backpacks and rooting through them to find their IDs and then trying to hunt them down on Facebook.
True. Yeah, carrying stuff from the scene of the crime from the scene of the police crime to the jail support.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I think that's some good advice. Let's jump into how you want to look and how you want to dress. You want to take that one, Josh?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the most important things you can do is wear the plainest clothes you have. No logos, no identifying features. I know you have your super vibrant, unique mask, but if you have access to like plain, generic N95s or whatever, highly recommend using those. And also bring extras because, I mean, I remember on Saturday there was somebody who got tear gassed and they had to like rip their mask off to like access and help themselves out. So I had an extra and I was able to help them out with that one.
Good. Hide your tattoos.
Yeah, hide your tattoos for sure, especially if they're super unique and very identifiable.
That's a good point. Also, let's talk about the controversy of sunscreen versus just bringing a wide brimmed hat. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Or?
Yeah, so I generally am against using sunscreen because it's oil-based and the oils will trap the tear gas particles on your skin. So it makes it a lot more difficult to deal with tear gas if you were wearing heavy sunscreen.
So don't bring sunscreen. Bring a nice hat.
Bring a nice hat and long sleeves. I mean, if you look at people that live in very hot places, they tend to wear long clothing that's very light, flowy, cottony, light color.
True. Also talk about footwear.
Yeah, I mean, obviously wear sneakers or boots, something comfy, something you're ready to run in. Don't wear flats or, I don't know, don't wear something that's burdensome.
Yeah, you want that stamina, straight stamina, you know?
Something that's comfortable to stand in for a while, something that's comfortable to run in.
True. Also, a backpack. You know, some people might say you should bring a backpack, some say you shouldn't. Personally, I think it's a good idea. If you do bring a backpack, what are some things you want to bring in your backpack? Just for general, in the street people, nothing specialized. Like, just what should everybody have in a backpack?
Yeah, I mean, obviously water and snacks are the basics just for being out in the world ever. But I would also highly recommend having some baking soda or already pre-mixed baking soda water, and we'll get into this later. There's a little controversy about that. But
True. Yeah, we'll get to that.
But I think having a bandana or some sort of small towel, something to wipe yourself off, because you're going to be sweating a lot, and it's important to get that sweat off you to stay cooler.
That's a good point. And in regard to food, one of the terms we used last night was hiking food. What are some hiking foods?
Yeah, like trail mix and stuff. So anything, if you were thinking about going hiking, what kind of foods would you bring? Beef jerky, whatever. If you eat meat, those kind of things are the kinds of foods that you should be bringing with you for a protest. Good
point. And then also, obviously, goggles. Some people might say you don't need goggles, but let's talk about that for a minute. Why should everybody bring goggles? Amelia, do you want to take that one?
Here's why everyone needs to bring goggles in 2020. Because the cops will tear gas you. They'll just throw tear gas canisters at you. And they'll do it out of nowhere, which happened on Monday on 676, unprovoked. So wear goggles because it really hurts to get tear gassed or pepper sprayed, which is, so just bring goggles. But the thing, it's complicated because everyone's buying goggles now and it's hard to find them. So,
there's some DIY tutorials for making like face masks out of 2-liter bottles. I saw Randy Winters, shout out Randy Winters, who was on our live stream. They made a seemingly really functional bottle mask. Check that out. That's an option if you can't find goggles anywhere. But I would also add that you want to bring goggles also because you want to be a helper. You don't want to be a victim. If you don't bring goggles and you end up getting gassed, you're creating work for people who are trying to help out,
Yeah, and it's okay if you get tear gassed and you need help. Like, that's totally fine. Don't be afraid to ask a medic or somebody for help.
Yeah, chances are people will come up to you and help you. I mean, the solidarity on the front lines is unreal, and if you see something going on, the chance of you also seeing somebody within the first 30 seconds approaching and rendering aid is very high.
That's a good point. So that's pretty good for preparation. You know, we've talked about what to do at home. We've talked about what to bring. I think we can start to talk about the specific roles when you're at a protest. You know, there's going to be people who are more up front. There's going to be people more in the back, in the middle. There's different types of activities you might be doing within that. So let's just start going through some of the roles. The first role that we had is the peaceful protester role. So do y'all want to talk about what it looks like to just be your peaceful protester? What are you doing out there?
Yeah, I think being peaceful, there's a lot of levels to it. But primarily, I think your role is support. I think you should be kind of sitting back and positioning yourself in a support role instead of on the front lines physically. But also, I think one of the best things that a peaceful protester, if you decide to take on this role, one of the best things that you could possibly do in that role is offer morale boost. You know, bring music, bring a drum, bring.
You want to be chanting, right?
Chanting. You know, those are the things that really help on the front lines.
Hell yeah! Be loud.
Yeah, be loud.
I see all y'all being all shy about it. You gotta fucking shout. You know, be loud. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I actually have something I really want to say about this. This is like the one thing that I really wanted to emphasize in this talk.
Go for it.
Is like just going down to the root and being like, why go to this protest? Like, everyone knows there's going to be huge protests today. Why are you going to go? And you might not fully understand that for yourself until you're there. But this is sort of echoing off of what World just said, which is don't be shy when you're chanting. When there's a chant going, like, you're going to confront this moment where you feel sort of shy and embarrassed. And that's because you're thinking about yourself in that moment, and you don't want to like go outside your comfort zone. You're very like focused on your own self. But once you sort of like relax and start to chant, and you start to really feel the power of being a part of a larger thing, you'll start to feel less like it's about you and more like it's about the whole movement in general, about everybody working together to try to create social change. And so like it's just really important to chant. And if you get as many people as possible chanting super, super loud where they're all together, then it's like this amazing, powerful thing. And that's the thing that can actually create social change and create meaningful change for
that's a great point.
World.
So if you're fulfilling the peaceful protester role, you know, you want to tap into your intentions, tap into those intentions, you know, tap into the collectiveness, the togetherness, and that'll help you to be loud.
Yeah, and a really good example of this is in the streets we've been chanting Breonna Taylor's name a lot, and now I think that case was just opened. So, you know, it really works, and it really does do a lot. And there's a lot left to do and a lot more stuff that has to get done, and that's why we're going to keep protesting. But chanting really does, have power.
That's a great point. And I think you mentioned too, but I just want to reiterate, it's never hurts to bring a Bluetooth speaker. You know, music is like hearing music at these long marches. Sometimes it feels like getting water in a desert, you know, just some emotion. Like music is so powerful. So if you have a little Bluetooth speaker, throw it in the bag, whatnot. But that's the peaceful protester role. Let's also talk about another role, which is documentation. Why you want to document and what you're going to bring if you're documenting. You know, just the all around. What is the documentation role? Josh, do you want to jump into that one?
Sure. So this kind of circles back to what you should bring in general, but I think if you want to be a documenter, burner phone with a high cap on your data plan is important. Spend that government cheddar on those good data plans.
That's a good point. So a lot of people don't know you can get smart burner phones, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Like a lot of people think a burner phone is just a little thing that has a shitty screen. No, you can get a smart burner phone and like log into shit and broadcast, live stream.
Right. So I think with live streaming, you're going to run out of battery very quickly because it burns through your shit super fast. So if you want to be doing this and that's the role you decide you want to take, bring extra batteries, charging cables, etc. Those kind of things are important.
And that's a good point about spending the government cheddar, because a lot of people right now, they're just sitting on a bunch of loot. A lot of people have rent discount. They got unemployment checks. Like, they donated some of it, but they have more. Like, yo, don't be afraid to get an extra battery, a burner smartphone. Like, put it towards, like, it's okay to put it towards yourself if you're using that towards the collective good.
For sure. But in terms of the documenter role, I do want to really, really deeply emphasize, if you are live streaming, do your best to stay behind people and not capture their faces, because the facial recognition technology that the law enforcement agencies are using is extremely advanced, and sometimes they only need your eyebrows and your eyes. Like, wearing a mask will not do it. Oh, there's a little mouse over there. Y'all see that?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I forgot to tell you, we have mice.
What's up,
Oh,
buddy?
shit, look at that.
Yeah, we also have kittens, though. So, that's all about to change. Anyway,
Sorry to derail, but yeah.
let's talk about also, so the live streaming, right? And then also last night we talked about one technique that people talk that's important is you want to live stream up to the point that cops get violent, and then you want to switch to phone storage, offline phone storage. Why is that?
Yeah, I participated in a training about this, and they said live streaming is really good to do until the cops start attacking people, which, just to reiterate, does happen a lot out of nowhere, as we've seen through a lot of documentation. So it is really important to document because it shows these things, but it's sort of tricky because if you just shot a video of some person getting attacked by the police, it's very possible that the police will try to charge that person with like aggravated assault or resisting arrest or whatever. So it's really helpful to not share those videos because the cops will find those videos and build their case around them. But if you keep them hidden and send them instead to the person's lawyer, then it will actually be able to help them. So, keep it on the DL. And I've actually had this happen to me before, where I was documenting some brutality, and then I sent it to the lawyer, and the person was able to beat their charges.
Cool. That's a good point. And also, just as a general statement, like, underground media is the news. Like, CNN is propaganda.
Yeah.
It's all propaganda.
Propaganda.
Like, we are the news. Proper grammar's propaganda. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we have about 13 minutes left. So let's start cooking.
Oh,
We should burn through this.
Yeah, let's cook through this. Okay. So
Tear gas.
let's go.
Well, should we do front
Let's
line?
move on to frontline
Front
roles.
lines.
So we've talked about backline roles, peaceful protester, documentation. Let's talk about what you're doing if you're up front, close to the cops. What are you doing? So one of the roles we talked about was putting your body between Black lives and cops. Why is that important? What are you going to bring to prepare for that? And what does that look like when you're doing it in the field?
Yeah, I think if you're going to be a frontliner, you should absolutely be mentally and physically prepared for extreme levels of violence. They will not hesitate to hit you with a baton, shoot you with a rubber bullet. And rubber bullets, by the way, are not what you think they are. They're like these giant 40-millimeter rounds, and they are steel interior, and they just happen to be rubber coated. But 3% of people that are struck with rubber bullets do actually die. So, I mean, it's about the same fatality
Pad
rate
up.
as COVID. So,
Point being,
Yeah.
wear your pads if you're going to be up front.
So if you have padding, if you have a helmet, absolutely wear it. Even like putting cardboard under your shirt and like wrapping a couple layers of cardboard can go a long way. And I'd highly recommend reinforcing your forearms because you can use that to kind of blunt the trauma of,
That's a good point.
of taking a baton or something.
Also, we talked about being aware of your arrestability. Obviously, if you're white, you have a less chance of being arrested. And you also want to keep in mind, if you're white, that you do not want to be agitating the cops. You want to talk about that a little bit?
If I see another white person yelling at the cops, I'm going to be like, hey, actually, like, you're not, it's not
Shut
for
the fuck
you.
up.
Like, you're agitating
Yeah.
right now.
Like, you're not the one who's going to pay the consequences of that agitation.
Yeah, and that's not to say that anger isn't valid, but there's other spaces for the anger that isn't a protest.
Hell yeah. That's a good point. And Amelia, you also talked about, if you're up front in the front lines, tapping into your intuition. Can you quickly just tell us what that means?
Yeah, basically, like, yeah, it's hard because it's so in the moment, but in the moment when you're up front at a protest, you'll often sort of click into this mode of focus from like your just adrenaline or whatever, and you'll just sort of intuitively understand where to go and what to do.
Cool. So just tap in, zone
yeah,
in.
don't be afraid to trust your instincts, you know.
Cool. Hell yeah. I'm just going to keep it moving for time's sake. But
Yeah,
another
for real.
frontline role that we talked about was being a witness is very important, and also being mentally prepared to record badge numbers, which, if you're fulfilling that role, you might also want to bring a pen and a pad, is more reliable than a phone, or just have Sharpies on hand.
Yeah, I mean, that could be also troublesome because if you're in the heat of the moment, it's going to be tough to do that. But definitely if you can remember badge numbers if they're not covered, because remember, a lot of police officers are covering their badges, they're covering their name tags, they're
True.
not identifying themselves, which is, I mean, I think that's a crime in of itself. But
Awful.
anyways, I think we should get into quickly the controversy that is the whole tear gas situation.
Oh, word. That's a great idea. We have about 10 minutes left. Is it cool if I run through there's one or two
Yeah.
roles before that? I can just
Go for it.
Yeah,
blast
let's just
through
rip
them.
it.
For real.
So be a witness, and then the other role that we had outside of the tear gas stuff is reading cops and being vocal. So what that means, reading a cop, is the cop putting on a gas mask? That tells you something. Are the cops sporting a bunch of zip ties for mass arrest? That tells you something. If you see those things, those are warning signs, and you should shout out to everybody. Like, they're gearing up for tear gas. You should shout out, again, like you said, be loud. You want to read the cops. Like, their body language tells you things. If they're slouched or if they're upright, those are warning signs. So be aware, and you can practice this even like during times of nonviolence. You can practice taking down badge numbers. You can practice reading their body language. So that's another role, reading the cops. But with that said, we're going to move on to kind of like a big topic, which I think we have enough time for. We have about 10 minutes. Tear gas. There's basically two roles when it comes to tear gas. There's snuffing out tear gas canisters, and there's treating tear gas victims. But we'll start with snuffing out the canisters. Amelia, like I mentioned, you snuffed one out the other day like a total badass. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what to bring if you're snuffing out tear gas and what that looks like in the field when you're actually doing it?
Yeah, and I'm going to go through this pretty quick. So the cops use tear gas because it's really effective at dispersing people and killing the vibe of the protest, and people go home. So it's really good to snuff them out. If you feel able to bring a few items to a protest, you can be really helpful. Here's what I'm going to bring to snuff them out. A wide mouth water bottle filled with like halfway with water, 3/4 with water, and heat resistant gloves to pop that canister into the water and shake it up and put it out. I learned this from watching the Hong Kong protests. I'm going to wear goggles and like a white dust mask, because just like this, because I don't want to get tear gas in my eyes.
So form-fitting, everything form-fitting to your face and cover up all your skin, right?
Yeah, cover up all your skin. I'm going to wear long sleeves and pants.
And this is something we didn't discuss, but really quickly I want to mention that for people that do grow facial hair, keep it as short as possible, because the more facial hair you have, the less secure of a fit you have on your mask.
Shave those mutton chops. So, also thick gloves, right? Because
heat-resistant gloves.
The tear gas canisters are extremely hot.
They're
That's
really
good.
hot.
Good to be aware of. So don't just grab them with your bare hands. You'll fuck up your hand. So thick gloves.
Also, this, people might weigh in on this. Don't throw them back at the cops because they already have tear gas masks on and shit. So it's like kind of useless. And then also it'll just keep spreading through the crowd. And like the goal of snuffing tear gas is to like keep the least amount of tear gas in the air as possible. So just put it out. Don't throw it, even though it might feel super dope to do that. It's just, it would be way better to put it out. The other thing is that a cloud of tear gas, people know this already, but it isn't gas. It's just like particles in the air. What does that mean? It'll like land on you and it'll be on your clothes. So like just be conscious of that and maybe Google how to like get, clean your clothes from
That's a
tear
great
gas.
point.
Yeah, and I want to throw in here that after you've been tear gassed, even if you weren't that close to it, do not put your clothes immediately in the wash. Let them dry out in an air dry and for about 72 hours. I would say 3 days or so.
Great point.
Because it will, if you put those clothes back on, or if you put them in the wash, it'll spread all over the rest of your clothes. And
It's nasty stuff.
weird.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if you have it on your hands, do not. It's like if you cut a super hot pepper. Don't touch your eyes. Don't touch your private parts. I know that's
Yeah.
maybe not something you want to
True.
hear, but do not do that if you've been tear gassed. It'll fuck
Great
you
point.
up.
And then also the last point for if you're trying to snuff out tear gas at a protest, we talked about positioning yourself in the crowd. Where do you want to be in the crowd if you're trying to snuff out tear gas or preparing for the event of them throwing tear gas at you?
Yeah, just read the cops and just be aware of the ones that are putting on gas masks and just sort of anticipate where they're going to throw it.
Be able to see them,
Right.
have an idea of where their arc is, where it's going to land.
They generally try to shoot for the most effective area, so they'll probably try to aim for the middle of the crowd. So
Great.
if you can be positioned sort of somewhere in the middle in the back of the field, you're probably in a better position.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the final role, which is a very important one, which is treating tear gas victims. There's a ton of controversy on this, and we have limited time, so we're just going to go through what our collective research brought us to.
No milk. Do not bring milk.
No milk.
No
Absolutely.
milk.
Yeah,
Don't do that.
Never bring milk to a protest. It'll get infected, and your eyes will be infected for days, and you'll be useless for the next protest.
True. And on a hot day, the milk curdles, right? It gets bacteria.
Yeah.
Milk gets gross.
Immediately.
Don't use milk. Okay, what do you want to use then?
Oh, wait. Okay, I just want to back up and say,
My bad.
tear gas is essentially the same as pepper spray. You can treat them the same way. It's going to burn for 30 minutes to an hour. It really is horrible. It's going to really suck, especially if you get it in your eyes. You're not going to be able to see. So that's why we're going to talk about this eye flush thing.
Yeah, so in my personal experience, and I know we've gone back and forth on this, and I've gone back and forth with this with other people as well, but I personally am an advocate for the baking soda water method, primarily because when you're in pain, you're kind of just kick right into fight or flight mode, and you're kind of in this primal mindset, and I really believe that anything you can do to alleviate that pain will bring your facilities back so that you can fully comprehend the situation around you. So while baking soda water, it does have the ability to scratch your eyes up if you get it in your eyes and you rub it in. I think it's worth the risk. Obviously, don't ever rub your eyes if you get tear gassed. That's the last thing you want to do ever is rub or touch your eyes.
Good point. Also, we're pretty low on time. We have about 3 minutes. Is it cool if I just run through these bullet points and then y'all can add any
definitely.
additions to that? So I'm just going to read off the end of our list here for treating tear gas victims. Okay, so bring a squirt water bottle, ideally with baking soda mixed in. Ask the victim for consent was an important one that Amelia learned at a tear gas workshop. So you want to go up to them and say, hey, do you need help? Do you want me to help? If they say yes, you want to ask the victim to sit on their hands. This is helpful because it gets them lower down. It's easier to treat their eyes, and their hands will be under their butt, so they won't be able to interfere with your treatment. After you treat them, you pull their eyes open, you squirt it with the liquid. They're going to say it didn't work. That's because they're still in a shit ton of pain. Actually, it did work, according to what you've researched, Amelia, and it cleared their vision. Because what you're trying to do, first and foremost, is clear their vision so that they can get to a safer place. So
they'll, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Also, with the eye flush, the proper technique is have them be below you, lift the eyebrow so that their eyelid slightly opens, and then flush from the bridge of the nose out towards the outside of their face. That's the proper technique.
Great. And someone just commented, what's up with the milk? Just to reiterate, it's hot. The milk goes bad. It gets bacteria in it. If you squirt that in someone's eye, it will infect their eye. Okay, with
Bad
that
news.
said, does anybody else have anything to add in terms of just the treatment procedure, consent, getting them low?
I would add, we did this on such short amount of time. I would research this a little bit further before you tried to help somebody.
There are people out there that know what they're doing, though, because they've been out in the streets for days and they've been dealing with this for days. So trust your people in the streets and
Trust your friends.
stay with them. And solidarity to everybody.
Hell yeah. All right, well, thanks for tuning in, y'all. I've been here with special guest Amelia Cry Till I Die, and also Josue. I hope to see you out at the protest today. Shit's gonna be
be safe.
fucking sick. Be safe out there,
Be
okay?
safe. Be safe. And thanks for tuning in.
Hell yeah. Later, y'all.